You can access the entire episode now on our website, forbiddenknowledge.news, Rokfin, Rumble, and all podcast platforms. You've got some exciting things coming in the works. Can't wait to see what comes out of that. But today we're going to get some updates surrounding the incredibly strange phenomena that you've been researching and documenting for a few years now at an undisclosed location in the southern United States called the Meadow, which you call the Skinwalker Ranch of the South. And it is, and so much more, from UFOs, orbs, and anomalous electromagnetic phenomena to portals, apparition, unidentified creatures and entities. And this is always such a favorite topic here to cover. But before we get into it, it's been a little while since you've been on. Remind the audience about yourself and your research.
I come from a military intelligence background. I was a U.S. Army intelligence officer. Before that, Eagle Scout, studied at the University of West Georgia under Bill Roll and, other real luminaries, in the parapsychology field. Got injured, in the U.S. Army Reserves, went into Department of Defense, kind of doing the same thing, kind of the intel security thing. So I did that for many, many years, did everything from the physical security of non-nuclear missiles and rockets to physical security of weapons of mass destruction. I was one of the guys that actually had what they call exclusionary access. I had clearance to go put my hands on the WMDs themselves. I had that kind of access. Then rolled back into more of a intelligence-based field, providing security and oversight for protection of classified information, documents, equipment, things like that. Did a stint in Afghanistan as an anti-terrorism and operations officer, and I retired as chief of intelligence and security at one of DoD's organic industrial bases. And a lot of people don't know this, but the DoD has huge factories that build things. And so I retired as a chief of intelligence and security at one of those big industrial facilities. But I've been retired since May. And, like I told somebody the other day, that was my job. That was my job, my go to work, pay the bills kind of thing. Now that I'm retired, I'm doing my vocation, which is, spending time with wonderful people like you, spreading my story and, discussing, really unique topics, and also researching and trying to, expose the world to some of the most amazing things that I've encountered, in my vocation, during my research. I'm working on my second book, so I'm about 4 chapters into that already. And my publisher has, been basically beating me about the head and neck about that, so I'm trying to get that out. So, pretty much for a retired guy, I'm pretty busy.
Excellent. Now, as much as you can tell us, how did this location come to your attention?
Yeah, that's a great question. And the cool thing is how it happened. It basically started like all, delving into stuff like this starts with research, and it's not, grabbing your Geiger counter and your night vision and jumping right out into the woods. It's doing the research, which is kind of boring. You can do go to the library, go to the internet, look at old newspaper articles, things like that. And we started hearing about folklore through word of mouth about a location that had a haunted road, and it was one of those, don't go down there at night or them haints will get you, and, with your background, how those kind of places are, they're really rich in folklore. And it turns out that the haunted road was a bust, but we had a lot of activity back at base camp and decided to start looking in that region, in that, general area. And there happened to be a field or meadow about half a mile from where our base camp was. So we really started focusing on that area, for a few reasons. It was a big open area. It was easy to, set up our research equipment in and all of that. And that's where things really started rocking and rolling. And so much so that when I started compiling all my field notes into some sort of, some sort of way that people could actually, get something out of it, it turned into a book. So, and that's where we are today. And the cool thing is this wasn't a one and done kind of thing. It wasn't like we went out there, researched, and that was it. The Meadow Project is an ongoing project. It literally is. That's why we call it the Meadow Project. And we are continuously going back out there and researching. We have a trip planned starting on the 25th of January. So, we're, still, even to this day, still researching this location and having just amazing results that are evolving. The phenomena is evolving. It's changing, which is really kind of neat. And, you've seen that at other sites. The phenomena starts off as, and this sounds weird, bread and butter UFO, which sounds crazy. That stuff's certainly not bread and butter, but, basic UFO sightings, basic cryptid, and then it evolves into something much more dynamic. And that's kind of what's going on out of the Meadow.
Well, I'd love to get some updates into some more recent phenomena that you've been dealing with.
Yeah, sure. And I've got my notes here, so just forgive me if I have to keep flipping
good.
back and forth. Like I said, I'm a former Intel guy, so I love notes and paperwork.
Oh, we love that too.
Yeah, back in July of 2021, and this is after the book. We had an expedition, and we noticed after the expedition, people's vehicles their alarm systems would arm and disarm themselves. And it got to be a joke that, okay, everybody make sure your keys are in your pocket or in your tent, because if you leave them in your vehicle, it's liable to lock itself. So we started noticing that with an individual. And we also had two individuals that on their way back home, their GPSs kept taking them in circles. This is in a big forest. This is a very remote, this area, so you don't even have cellular service here. That's how remote this is. So, once they, were using their automobile GPS, it just kept taking them in circles. Like there were these weird, geomagnetic anomalies that were confusing their electronic systems. And in 2021, this is kind of one of the more disturbing things that happened. Is one of our team members who had earlier, years ago, after an encounter in the Meadow, started having dreams about orbs coming into her bedroom and then things standing over her at night. Where have we heard those kind of things before? That's classical abduction type, things that, manifest. People have, they say they had dreams, but it turns out to be something else. While she was on her way home, all the electronic equipment in her car died. The electrical system died. She had no ignition, to her spark plugs, nothing. The vehicle completely died on a dark, lonely road. Now, where have we heard about, vehicles just dying in the middle of nowhere? Well, probably one of the best accounts is the Betty and Barney Hill, account. So I have a hypnotherapist, licensed professional counselor, LPC, and hypnotherapist that's been working with us on hypnotic regression. And so we're taking some of the team members that have had some of the more amazing things happen to them, and we're going through hypnotic regression. And to that ends, I don't know if you remember, when we had talked earlier about one of my team members who had two events happen. One was very early in our research. He had a bout of missing time as he was heading towards the Meadow. He just did not recall getting to a certain location. And he also had another encounter about 2 years later where he was in base camp and he heard a craft. He couldn't see anything, but he heard something move along the gravel road adjacent to our base camp. And his Geiger counter spiked up to 0.66 microsieverts per hour, which is, it's not a dangerous amount, but it's an amount that you need to, be aware of. And so we did a hypnotic regression on this gentleman. And during the regression, we got to the part of the missing time, and there was a block there that we could not punch through with regression. Now, I talked to the psychotherapist, and he said we want to go back and re-look at that point. That the block was so strong that he said he cannot recall anything. He has no memories prior to leaving camp and arriving at this landmark. So it's just like this big black block, total memory erased. So, I talked to the therapist and he said that's usually you don't see that unless somebody has something very traumatic happen and their mind has buried that event so deep that their psyche will not let them recall it. And when I say traumatic, I don't necessarily mean something bad, but something that changes their worldview, that changes their reality.